This picture here is a picture of A.J. Johnson. That's right, A.J. Johnson. For those of you who don't know who this is, she was in a movie back in the early 90s with Christopher Reed and Christopher Martin, who's actually the cousin of Martin Lawrence, in a film called House Party, which actually was the first movie I remember seeing Martin Lawrence in. And it was I guess you can call it a cult classic for those of us in the black community, particularly those of us that grew up in the 80s and 90s. A.J. Johnson was one of the women that was one of the young women that was featured in that film. She played the role of Charlene. I think her name is Charlene or Charlene. I can't remember exactly what her name was, but she's iconic for that role. And then she went ahead and she starred in John Singleton's movie with Tyrese called Baby Boy, where she played his mother. You know, beautiful sister. She is pretty. I'm posting her picture because of the fact that you can read an article here. Madame Noir, Mammy Noir, you know, the white supremacist shield blog that always takes shots at black men, particularly black men here in America, posted an article where she talked about that how black men in Africa were better than black men here in America because they want to commit. And this goes back to my initial point that there's never a bad time to throw American black men under the bus for anything in this society. And this is another example of exactly what I'm talking about. And another example of the sisterhood of failure that's being perpetuated in American society. And this isn't just regulated to black women, but it's regulated to a lot of women, period, in our society. But I'm going to focus on, you know, my own community just for this article, but it's not particularly just regulated to black women because there's other celebrities like Charlize Theron, I think, is part of this whole sisterhood of failure. Same thing with some other celebrities, white women who are part of it. But let me talk about her, for example. Now, in case you're wondering what this woman's age is, she is 56 years old. That's right. She is 56 years old, which means that when she came out with the movie House Party, when she was in it, and she was a viable, bankable movie star, that meant that she was in her 20s. And if you saw her during that time, she was actually, you know, a pretty hot girl. She was very, very hot. Not saying that she's bad looking now. I mean, because she still, you know, is nice looking, you know, for those that like that really niche type of softcore porn or hardcore porn, the granny porn. I mean, if that's what you're into, then this is definitely the lick for you. But anyway, I digress. But anyway, she still is not a bad looking lady, but she's 56 years old. She's 56 years old. And the reason why I point out that age, because this is quite common that I see with a lot of women in American society, particularly a lot of black women, is that they fall into this trap where they either choose the wrong men when they're young, or even worse, they choose the wrong men when they're young, or they choose their careers and they mess around and treat their vaginas as if it's a trampoline, and then wait until they get into their 40s and worse 50s or late 30s in order for them to try to settle down and find themselves a suitable mate. And this whole logic, I don't understand where this logic comes from. Maybe this logic, you know, stems from feminism. I don't know exactly where it comes from, but I think it's very failed logic. And here's why. Because one thing that women like A.J. Johnson doesn't understand is that, and I don't know her, by the way, so, but I'm putting her in this category because of the way that she's talking. And instead of her evaluating some of her behavior from her past, it's very easy to sit up and throw black males in America, particularly, under the bus. There's something wrong with you niggas, not something wrong with me. And this is the kind of thinking and the kind of mentality that we see that's very prevalent within the female population. And I think, like I said before, this mode of thinking is very, very, very wrong. And here's why. Because the most desirable age for women, and I'm telling you this as a man, the most desirable age as a woman, before men, for women, are when you are in your 20s. That's when you're at the pinnacle in terms of how of your desirability and your ability in terms of being able to attract yourself a high producing male. Because one thing AJ Johnson doesn't understand, and people have to understand this, I mean, even now, I'm pretty sure she'll still be able to capture and still be able to have and pull some thirsty Negroes online saying how good she looks, and I still would smash. And sure, I'm sure she can get that. Any woman can get that. Lizzo can get that. I keep talking about Lizzo, I'm sorry. But any woman can get that. But to have a man provide and protect for you is another different situation altogether. And if you're dealing with the man who has options, somebody who's making $300,000 a year, even a guy that's making over $100,000 a year, he has options. A guy that's definitely a millionaire, and he has the option. Most men, if they have the option of being with some woman who is still physically in their prime, I'm talking about, 20s, maybe early 30s, are still physically in their prime, no kids, good attitude, versus someone who's 56 years old, who's got a steak attitude, probably has kids and the age that she is, possibly grandchildren, right? And on top of that, they're still expecting you to provide and protect for them. Most men are going to choose the woman, going to choose the first option. They're going to choose those girls that are in their 20s and possibly in their early 30s. That's just the way things work. And for some reason, there's this culture that's emerged within American society where women think that they can just flaunt through their 20s, and now it's gotten to the point through their 30s, sleeping with as many guys as they possibly can, and there's not consequences for that. There isn't consequences for it. I'm not saying you can't do that. I'm not one to sit up and to judge or to sit up and to try to control anyone's body and their sexual behavior. However, you have to understand there are consequences for it. There's consequences for it. And the consequences for women is quite greater than the consequences for men. All right. And we're seeing right now what the consequences are for women that fly through their 20s, and they don't take that window of opportunity to find themselves a high producing male. So here's the lesson that I'm going to give out to all you young women if you're listening to what I have to say. Okay? Don't waste your youth chasing bum niggas and chasing individuals that are low producing, low quality males. Don't waste your 20s chasing guys who don't have a job, chasing guys who can't provide you anything else but big dick and bubble gum. Don't waste your 20s sitting up dealing with individuals that are not going anywhere in life. Okay? Don't waste your time with these kind of guys. And for AJ Johnson to sit up and say that she spent her whole entire 20s and she couldn't find one high-producing male that was interested in her as fine as she was in her 20s, I find that very difficult to believe. She just wasn't looking for the right guys, or she just wasn't ready to try to settle down with anyone or look for a high-quality male when she had the opportunity to actually pull one. Okay? And this now is the consequence of her decision. So those are my 2 cents, because you have too many women out here that are going around indulging in slut culture, coined by people like Amber Rose, indulging in that and thinking there won't be long-term consequences for it. And the consequence for it is the fact that one day you'll turn up and you're 40-something years old, or worse, in her case, in your 50s, and you're still trying to find yourself a high-producing male, and you have to settle for something that you really don't want to settle for. Because let's be real, this guy that she's with, who she's talking about in Africa, who's younger than her, that's not who she wants. That's not who she wants. All women, and I usually don't make generalizations, but this case I will. All women want to be with a guy, if they're into guys, they want to be with the guy that is a come up for them. They want to be with the guy who's a come up for them. Ideally, that's who women want to be with. Not saying they won't be with the guy who's going to come up for them, but ideally, most women want to be with the guy who's a come up for them. Okay? In the case of this brother, whoever he is, where she went, she's a come up for him. And truth be told, any cat that's not in her circle that she dates or sleeps with, or marries, unless he's someone that's in her circle, will be a come up. Her presence will be a come up for him. All right. And that's not what she wants. So I'm saying this to the ladies. This is really for the ladies. Don't make the same mistake as AJ Johnson. Don't waste your youth. Okay. Don't waste your youth with unproductive males. Find somebody who's a productive male. Get with an unproductive male. And that's the best time actually for you to get yourself with somebody who is a productive male when you're at the zenith in terms of your attractiveness. So is it fair? No. But is it logical? Absolutely. Women are valued by the physical appearance, typically, among other things. And guys are valued in terms of how we produce, in terms of how we measure up for providing protection for the women that we're with. All right. And that's a lesson for the day. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Ra's Rants. Link, subscribe, like the channel, and I will talk to you soon. Later.